In this episode, we tackle the challenges of long-term unemployment head-on, offering practical strategies to stay motivated and maintain well-being during this transitional period. From volunteering and self-care practices to embracing personal time, Sabina and I explore avenues to preserve balance and resilience. Additionally, we discuss the importance of preparedness amidst job insecurity, providing listeners with valuable insights to navigate uncertain times with confidence. I want to ask you this question around staying motivated and being optimistic. What are some strategies, especially for those who are experiencing prolonged unemployment? What are some of your kind of top strategies for staying motivated and optimistic during, of course, a stressful time of needing to pay bills and the like?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Someone reached out to me the other day and asked that, and it definitely brought back some not pleasant memories because I was in that. I was in that hole, that valley, and I think a lot of it is there are things that we kind of resist when we're out of work, like talking to people because we feel we can't contribute anything to a conversation. So not true.
So not true.
I think it is the development. So things like keep learning. It makes you feel good and accomplished to get that little certificate on there's
Mhm.
free learning everywhere, folks. Coursera, LinkedIn, you just Google
YouTube
it.
University.
YouTube University. Your state employment departments actually offer free training if you
That's
want to do a
right.
career shift. And I had a client who got I didn't know you at the time, but he got a free project management certification. The state
Nice.
paid for it,
Yep.
and it helped him get a new job before he even finished. He just put it on his resume, and he said, "Oh my gosh, it was like sharks to chum," and which I love. Uh, I think it's also giving to others. It doesn't. I understand your bandwidth is low, but it could be as much as liking somebody's post on LinkedIn or saying to somebody, "Oh, you're out of work. I can't help you, but I know somebody," as you said earlier, Crystal, or uh, just going out for a walk with somebody, mentoring someone, volunteering. I've had clients get full-time jobs through volunteering,
Ooh. Okay.
uh,
What's
which is great.
the like most unique volunteer story that you know of? Was it like at their animal shelter and they became the project manager for their
No, okay,
IT? I
so
mean, that would be my dream.
um, this was actually I was volunteering to counsel people who were out of work.
Uh-huh.
And uh, one of the people I was kind of coaching, counseling's the wrong word, coaching, had gotten to a point, they'd been out of work to a point where they were going to more or less food banks. And there was one that they went to all the time. People knew them. She said they definitely treated her with dignity, which she appreciated. And they were having this issue with uh, kind of like it wasn't a financial issue, it was really how to handle their accounts
Hmm.
and kind of track their inventories. And she knew QuickBooks. And she made this comment, well, if you download the free version of this, you can go ahead and scan. And like she's just had this conversation with them. They're like, thank you. You really helped us out. And then the next time she was there, they pulled her aside and they're like, do you think you could maybe help us out a couple of hours a week and get it straightened out? And she was more than happy to give back. And then that built into, we need you for a day. She's more or less now working for a group of them, getting paid,
Wow.
where she couldn't find a job doing that. And it was all because she just offered advice.
Hot damn. I mean, that's
And
what it's
and I love
about.
that story. I like get misty because
Dude, I got
she's yeah,
goosebumps. Oh my
she's like
gosh.
"Oh, I didn't have to say anything to them. I could have just let it go, but I could help. And it felt
Hmm.
so good to just be able to offer one sentence of advice that,
Yeah.
oh, I still have something to offer. And then it snowballed into this career for her. And I think it's wonderful.
And there's something so valuable. I know sometimes the nonprofits get a lot of flack for, oh, they're not as competitive as private sector, but I think in today's world, like doing stuff from a feel good perspective, it just means it probably pays itself, right? And just how good you feel.
Well,
Because
that's a
sometimes you can
proven.
get bitter, right? With these big companies with their, shareholder earnings, and we didn't earn enough. So big layoffs. And not to say that it doesn't happen in nonprofit, but it
Mhm.
was like, oh, that's such a great story. You were going to say something, Sabina.
Oh, no, and I was gonna say, though, physiologically, it's true that helping others or even witnessing someone helping someone else, I go back to, I think it's from Simon Sinek's Just Ask Why, or
Mm-hmm.
Finding Your Why, about, I wanna say, I'm gonna get it wrong, oxytocin is,
I
I
think so.
think, what's released into the brain when you do a good deed, and it's the feel good thing. They say it's like, I think they call it like the puppy hormone. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
pet a puppy, you suddenly feel really good. And
Oh, now I want to go get a puppy.
I know. Well, there are groups that will bring puppies into the workplace because it makes everybody feel good to hold a puppy for a little bit.
I
And
see those pictures on Instagram where
uh-huh.
people doing puppy yoga, and I'm like, where is that? I need to be
And
there.
yeah,
But I hate yoga. I just want the puppies.
but getting back to your initial question of when you are, it's hard when you're feeling down because you're not
Mhm.
as aware. So I tell people, I get you've lost your job, you need to take a little time off. But my theory is do not do that for more than a couple of days, but you need to start being active, having a structure and a routine. I
Mhm.
fell into that trap and I didn't realize how bad it was until luckily a friend slash mentor said, yeah, something's wrong with you. We need to get you out of this and get you in. She lived in the South, and she said, you need to come visit, be in the warmth, the sun. And it was life changing. It rejuvenated me. It made me start to think about, I needed to structure my day. I
Mhm.
needed to actually work on me. And things started to turn around very quickly after that.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
So kind of some takeaways. I know we kind of went through a couple of turns. Um, you know, being optimistic, right? Staying motivated, maybe not spend so much time thinking about what's wrong with us or feeling like there's something wrong with us, but going out there into the world. If
Yeah.
it's going to your local park to get sun, if it's volunteering, if it's going to the animal shelter, if you like animals and petting a puppy or two. And, hopefully it doesn't get as, dire per se that you have to rely on some of those services, but a lot of times those services, they're hurting. They don't necessarily have the capacity or the skill set that you might bring to the table from a volunteering standpoint.
Mhm.
And, just offering help when it's needed. Quite honestly, they needed it. It wasn't that they were asking from a selfish standpoint. And I think when we get caught up right in our four walls, you don't go out there and see who needs help. And
Right.
I bet any of these organizations, I'm around the corner from a senior center. I bet you if I went in there and said, hey, can I volunteer for a day? They would pounce at it.
I
Um,
think so.
right? It's,
Yeah.
there's a food bank here in our community. And, sometimes we think that if we live in a well-to-do neighborhood, right, that, oh,
Mm.
everyone, they've got it going on. There are people in our communities, like in these little hidden pocket neighborhoods, that need help. And it's not necessarily to say, oh, they have it worse than you, but it's that oxycontin, that feel good hormone or whatever release that can probably do us some good. And it's not, again, to say, oh, well, go out there in the world. And because I hate that statement when people say, you could be starving in this country. And I'm like, that's okay. I'm dealing with me, but it's not so much just dealing with you. It may be giving yourself grace to say, I'm not going to focus on me right now. I'm going to
Yeah.
focus on if I can be of service to others. And I think that's so, so important.
Yeah. Two things I want to address in that if I can. First of all, there's nothing wrong with focusing on you. In fact, that is
Mhm.
your responsibility. If you are not at your best, you can't help anyone else. That includes
That's
a new
true.
employer.
Mhm.
And I know you weren't saying that. I just think that we feel guilty, especially when we're out of work, to do that. I know I did, but
Mhm.
it really is your responsibility to make sure that you are healthy so that it's kind of the whole foundation of the book. So that when you return to work, you can focus on learning the new job. You've
Mm-hmm.
already done all the work to recover from the trauma of losing your job. The other thing you mentioned about not like taking it personally, I don't think that's exactly what you said, but losing your job, in most cases, when people lose their job, it is not their fault. It is
Mm-hmm.
rarely a performance issue or they've done something egregious. It is usually a business decision. It's
Mm-hmm.
numbers. It's, you know, cutting down the balance sheet before the end of the year or the month. It's cost cutting. And yet we take on that responsibility. We assume we have done something wrong. That's where shame comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Shame is actually taking accountability for having done something wrong. Yet we feel shame when we lose a job and we've done nothing wrong.
Mm-hmm. And would you
And
say it's the same thing when we don't get the job, right? When we
yes,
go through 5 rounds of interviews
mhm,
and we didn't get the job, or just even submitting your resume and they immediately turned you down. I'm like, what's wrong with me? Because I felt
exactly.
that.
And it's let's paradigm shift that. It's not what's wrong with me, it's what do I need to do differently
Mm-hmm.
in most cases. Like, do you have the right skills on your resume? Do you have an updated social media profile? Are you really applying for job? This is the biggest mistake I see from people. They're applying for jobs at a level lower than their ability.
Mm.
No one's going to interview you for that because they think you're going to come in, work until you get the job you really want, and leave them.
But Sabina, I can't even get the
I
interview for the
and
job that I am
I
qualified
I
for.
if I have a list of people who have pretty much come back to me on that, and I've always said the same thing to them, like, try it my way for a month and see what happens. Every one of them has gotten a job. And they were
Mm-hmm.
like, why did no one tell me this? And it's silly things like, are you putting the right verbs on your resume?
Mm-hmm.
Are they really verbs that reflect a senior manager level, or are you coming across as the doer? And
Mm-hmm.
if you want to be the doer, that's great. But there's this whole misalignment. I mean, that could be a whole other conversation we have. But
Right. Well, I've made a note, send resume to Sabina.
yeah,
Send my resume to
we don't give
Sabina.
ourselves enough credit. We're like, oh, we have to be modest. Like, no,
Mm-hmm.
no, no. The time you should brag is looking for a job.
Right, right. No, this is great, and I appreciate the rebuttal, if you will, just from a clarification standpoint, because I absolutely agree with that we go through all these emotions
Mhm.
and how one person might take it. It's also making sure that even in this conversation that nobody feels any kind of shame, but it's really about
Yeah,
thought provoking and kind of looking outside in. But also a big subscriber to put your mask on first before you can help others.
yeah.
And I think that you definitely hit that point as well, is that I'm not at all advocating, if you have not in a good mood, don't go pet puppies, because it might not work out well for you.
Or the puppy. No, no, no.
Or the puppy.
I absolutely want everyone to be safe, but there are these, I think when you give yourself permission to care for yourself, you understand if you don't value yourself, no one else will value you.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes across in job interviews. It comes across at work. And we're taught not to do that. We're taught the opposite, especially women.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
And we have to. It's okay if you're a giver. There's nothing wrong with that. I think both of us are huge givers,
Mhm.
but we have to make sure that we are healthy enough so that we can give back the way we want.
Yeah. Well, that kind of segues into a question I have for you is, and you've touched on it a lot, is how unemployment can really take a toll on us from a mental health standpoint.
Mhm.
What are some specific practices that you recommend? And you may have touched on it, so this is a great opportunity for us to kind of have that bullet point, like, consider this, consider this. What are
Yeah.
some practices that you recommend to maintain that mental health well-being during the period of unemployment?
Yeah. So I'm going to go very old school here and say preparing for it before it happens. I don't
Mm,
think we think about this. And when I released the book, I thought, okay, it's going to be for people out of work. I was surprised how many people who felt, I call it job insecure, were reaching out to me of,
Mm.
what do I do now? Because I feel like it might happen. I don't want it to, but, and I think it's that, and this is where I'll go back to project management because there's so much in common. Step back and really look at, okay, what's the lay of the land of my life? And you can use self-care as your foundation, or I call it like bucketing. And do I have some money in savings? Am I running a lean household right now because I'm a little concerned? Uh, have I gotten all my doctor's appointments? Because my healthcare might be in jeopardy. And am I really doing what I want to do? Do I have a resume that's ready to go? Uh, all of those things, it's taking control. And I think that changes people's attitudes at work. And you come in more confident because if the worst case scenario happens, you are ready. And that's a big part of building resilience is you're not going to make really important decisions out of emotion of losing your job. You're making them from the point of strength of still having a job. So I think that's like the number one really good piece of advice I can give people. Um, I think it's being mindful of, is this serving me? Is
Mm-hmm.
this aligning with my values? Is this giving me the life balance that I want? And should you be looking for a new job, a new career? Is there prep you need to do for that, such as learning, certification, relocating, whatever it takes? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's your life. You get to decide it. So I think all of that. And then I like what you said earlier about the building relationships. Very often we'll stop, using, I don't know, like social media or industry groups or websites to build relationships and meet people. That should be an ongoing thing. It shouldn't take tremendous amounts of time. So do that quality over quantity thing.
Mm-hmm.
I had joined a learning group in the middle of the pandemic because I felt I needed a social outlet. I live alone. And these are friends in real life now. We shared our industry, our knowledge, we helped each other, but I've gotten together with these folks on a personal level where we don't talk about work. They have actually given me contract work. I've helped them get employment because I have that really good network.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, I won't be the first to own it. I did not intentionally do it. And I think sometimes, what if I'd really sought out to do this? Imagine how awesome it would be. I'm lucky. Uh, but create your own luck. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and you won't have to be alone.
I hope you enjoyed that enlightening conversation on fostering motivation and self-care strategies amidst long-term unemployment. Key takeaways from this conversation are to leverage volunteer opportunities to stay engaged and proactive, prioritize self-care practices to safeguard mental and emotional well-being, embrace personal time while seeking balance in life, and recognize the value of preparedness in mitigating job insecurity. Stay tuned for our final episode with Sabina Sulat.